am Allison Foster, 28 years old. For years, I believed that if I shouldered all the family expenses, everyone would see I mattered. I paid the mortgage, insurance, electricity, everything about $3,000 a month, drawn directly from my account, so my parents and younger brother could live comfortably. I worked overtime, skipped vacations, living on coffee and budget spreadsheets. Yet no matter how hard I tried, my brother was still the star in their eyes. Last-minute plans, big ideas, endless excuses, and they always prioritized him. And me. Still just the one who pays. When I got engaged and planned my wedding in Asheville, I thought, this time they'll show up for me. I sent the invitations, picturing my family in the front row proud as I walked down the aisle. But the answer was no, time too busy, too tired. I swallowed my tears and told myself it was fine. Until I saw them grinning in photos from my brother's BBQ captioned, "Family is everything." On the very day of my wedding, I stayed silent for the moment. Then I canceled every payment account and dropped a message in the family group chat. Immediately, my phone buzzed nonstop. And for the first time in years, I let them hear my true voice. Before we get into my story, tell me what time you're watching and which city you're in. Sometimes a single comment is enough to warm the storyteller's heart. From childhood to now in our house, every gaze found Caleb first, as if the spotlight only ever flicked on when he stepped into the room. My brother Caleb, a few years older than me, had a knack for charming everyone, our parents' neighbors, even strangers at the grocery store. He'd flash a grin, spin a story about his next big plan, and they'd eat it up. Meanwhile, I was the one keeping the family afloat. For years, I paid $3,000 a month for the mortgage on our family home in Asheville, plus $500 for insurance, and another $200 for electricity and water. My bank account bled while Caleb blew through cash on new sneakers, weekend trips, and fancy dinners he couldn't afford. He hadn't held a steady job in years, always between opportunities, as he put it. I'd come home from my bank job exhausted, only to hear him pitching some new startup idea that never went anywhere. My mom, Barbara, and my dad, Thomas, never saw a problem with it. "He's finding his way," Barbara would say, her voice soft like she was talking about a kid who just needed a little push. Thomas would nod, adding, "Caleb's got big dreams." I'd bite my tongue, wondering why my dream stability respect never got the same defense. Once I suggested they chip in for the bills. I was younger, maybe too hopeful, thinking they'd see how much I carried. "We're tight on money," Barbara said, not even looking up from her phone. "Caleb needs our support right now." Thomas just shrugged like it was my job to keep things running. I left the room, my face burning, promising myself I'd never ask again. It wasn't just the money. Caleb's charm came with a price: my invisibility. Last Christmas, I spent hours cooking dinner for the family, hoping for a moment to shine. Caleb showed up late, regaling everyone with tales of a music festival he'd crashed. Barbara hung on his every word, laughing while my turkey sat cold on the table. Thomas didn't even notice I'd left the room. My fiancé Daniel saw it all. That night, as we cleaned up, he took my hand and said, "You don't have to keep doing this forever, you know. They don't deserve it." His words stuck with me like a spark I wasn't ready to ignite yet. I'd spent so long trying to prove my worth, thinking if I paid enough, worked enough, they'd finally see me. But I wasn't ready to give up. My wedding was coming up, a chance to start fresh. I poured my heart into planning it, picking every detail: the flowers, the music, the outdoor stage in Asheville where Daniel and I would say our vows. I imagined Barbara and Thomas there, smiling, maybe even proud. I pictured Caleb showing up for once, not stealing the spotlight. Daniel helped me choose the invitations, his steady presence reminding me I wasn't alone. "They'll come," I told him, my voice more hopeful than I felt. "They have to." Deep down, I knew it was a long shot, but I clung to it. If I could just get them to show up, maybe they'd see I was more than their ATM. The planning kept me busy, but Daniel's words echoed. Why was I still carrying them? Every month, I logged into my bank account, watching my savings dwindle to keep their lights on. Caleb's latest business venture had him renting a downtown loft he couldn't pay for while I cut back on my own groceries to cover the family's bills. Barbara called it temporary, but temporary had lasted years. Thomas never mentioned it like my sacrifices were invisible. I started to wonder if Daniel was right, if I was holding on to a family that didn't hold on to me. But the wedding was my last hope. I mailed the invitations, my hands shaking, picturing them opening the envelopes, finally realizing what I meant to them. The outdoor stage in Asheville sparkled on my wedding day. I walked down the aisle, my white dress trailing behind me, scanning the crowd for my family. I'd pictured them here, my mom, my dad, even Caleb, smiling, maybe clapping for once, focused on me. I'd spent months planning this, picking every detail from the roses to the music, hoping they'd show up. But the chairs I'd reserved for them sat empty. My heart sank, but I forced a smile, gripping my bouquet tighter. Daniel stood at the altar, his steady gaze grounding me. I told myself they were just late, stuck in traffic, anything but absent. Halfway through the morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Barbara. "We're too busy to come." No apology, no explanation, just those 5 words. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. Thomas followed with a message of his own. "Sorry, kid, we can't make it." Kid. Like I was still a teenager asking for a ride, not a bride, on her wedding day. I stepped away from the guests, my veil catching on a chair, and dialed Barbara's number. It rang and rang, then went to voicemail. I tried Thomas next, same thing. My chest tightened, the silence louder than the music around me. They didn't even bother to pick up. I pushed through, pasting on a smile as I greeted aunts, uncles, and friends. The ceremony started, and I said my vows. Daniel's voice warm and sure as he promised to stand by me. But every few minutes I glanced at those empty chairs, hoping for a miracle. None came. Then, as we posed for photos, my phone pinged again. It was my cousin Megan sending a picture that stopped me cold. There, on a sunny park lawn, were Barbara, Thomas, and Caleb grinning around a grill, burgers in hand. The caption read, "Family is everything," posted an hour ago, right as I was walking down the aisle. Megan added a message. "I'm so sorry, Allison. You don't deserve this." I zoomed in on their faces, their laughter, and felt something break inside me. I shoved the phone into my pocket, my hands shaking. Daniel noticed, pulling me aside behind the stage. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice low. I showed him the photo, my throat too tight to speak. His jaw clenched, but he took my hand, squeezing it gently. "You're stronger than this," he said. "Don't let them ruin your day." His words steadied me, and I nodded, forcing myself to smile for the guests. We cut the cake, danced our first dance, and I laughed through the toasts, but that photo burned in my mind. They weren't just absent, they'd chosen Caleb's barbecue over my wedding, posting it for the world to see. As the reception wound down, I slipped away to a quiet corner, staring at my phone again. Megan's message sat unanswered, her sympathy, a small comfort against the sting of betrayal. I'd spent years carrying their weight, paying their bills, hoping for a shred of recognition. But this was different. It wasn't just neglect. It was a deliberate choice to erase me from their family is everything moment. I thought of all the times I'd swallowed my hurt, told myself to keep going, to keep paying. No more. That photo wasn't just a snapshot. It was a wake-up call. I wasn't going to let them walk over me anymore. I'd do something big to make them see what they'd taken for granted. Daniel found me, his tie loosened, his smile soft. "You okay?" he asked. I shook my head, but my voice was steady. "Not yet," I said. "But I will be." I tucked my phone away, my mind racing. I didn't know exactly what I'd do, but I knew it would change everything. They thought they could ignore me, choose Caleb's party over my wedding, and I'd just keep paying their way. They were wrong. That night, I sat in the living room staring at the bills. My laptop screen glowed with numbers that told a story I'd ignored for too long. Years of bank statements stared back at me, each one a reminder of how much I'd given up. Since I started working at the bank, I'd poured thousands into my family's life, $3,000 a month for the mortgage, $500 for insurance, hundreds more for utilities. I added it up over $100,000 in the last 5 years straight from my savings. Every paycheck I earned seemed to vanish into their house, their cars, their comfort, while I cut corners on my own life. I hadn't taken a vacation in years, hadn't bought new clothes unless they were on sale. All so they could live without worry. Then, I found something worse. Tucked in an old email, I saw the agreement I'd signed 2 years ago, $65,000 my own money invested in Caleb's startup. He'd pitched it as a sure thing, a food delivery app he swore would make millions. I'd handed over the cash, thinking it was my chance to be part of his big dreams to finally matter to him. But the app never launched. Caleb had spent the money on consultants' fancy dinners and a new laptop he didn't need. My money gone while he partied and called it networking. I felt my stomach churn, my fingers gripping the laptop. How had I let this happen? Daniel walked in carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He set one down beside me, his eyes catching the screen. "What's that?" he asked, leaning closer. I showed him the email, my voice tight. $65,000. I gave it to Caleb for his startup. And he blew it. Daniel's face hardened. "They don't deserve you," he said, his tone sharp. "You've been their bank for years and they didn't even show up to our wedding. You don't owe them anything." His words hit like a spark, igniting something I'd buried. He was right, they'd taken me for granted and I'd let them. I didn't have to keep carrying their weight. I leaned back, my mind drifting to moments I'd tried to forget. My 25th birthday, when I'd waited at a restaurant for Barbara and Thomas only to get a text, "Caleb needs us tonight." They'd gone to his band's gig instead, leaving me alone with a cake I didn't eat. My college graduation, where I'd walked across the stage scanning the crowd for them. They weren't there. Caleb had a crisis with his car and they'd rushed to help him. Each memory stung, piling up like unpaid debts. I'd told myself it didn't matter, that family was supposed to sacrifice, but seeing their faces in that barbecue photo laughing while I said my vows made it clear they didn't sacrifice for me. I opened my banking app, scrolling through the automatic payments I'd set up. Mortgage, insurance, electricity, all tied to my account. I could stop them with a click. And Caleb's startup. My name was still on the investment contract, giving me the right to pull out. I could demand my $65,000 back, or at least what was left of it. The thought sent a rush through me, a mix of fury and freedom. I'd spent years trying to earn their love with money, but they'd chosen Caleb's barbecue over my wedding. They didn't get to have both. Daniel sat beside me, his hand on my shoulder. "What are you thinking?" he asked. I looked at him, my voice steady. "I'm done being their ATM," I said. "I'm canceling the payments, and I'm pulling my money from Caleb's project." He nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Good," he said. "You deserve to put yourself first." I spent the rest of the night mapping it out, every account I'd close, every payment I'd stop, every step to take back what was mine. I imagined their faces when the bills piled up, when Caleb's startup crumbled without my cash. For the first time, I felt powerful, like I was finally breaking free. The next morning, I logged into my online banking. I hit the cancel button on every payment account. The mortgage, $3,000 a month, gone. The insurance, $500 stopped. Electricity, water, even the internet they used to stream their shows, all disconnected from my account. Each click felt like shedding a weight I'd carried too long. For years, I'd been the one keeping their lives running while they ignored me. Not anymore. I leaned back in my chair, my pulse racing, knowing this was only the beginning. I opened my phone's group chat with Barbara, Thomas, and Caleb. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard, crafting a message that had been building inside me for years. Mortgage, insurance, electricity. "Take care of it yourselves," I typed. I hit send before I could second-guess it. The message landed in the chat with a soft ping, but it felt like a thunderclap. I stared at the screen, waiting for the fallout. Within minutes, my phone lit up with Barbara's name. I let it ring, her call going to voicemail. Her voice came through sharp and accusing. "How could you be so selfish, Allison? After everything we've done for you, I didn't listen to the rest." Selfish. The word stung, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. Thomas's text came next, his words heavy with disappointment. "Why are you trying to ruin this family?" he wrote. Ruin the family. I almost laughed. I'd been the one holding it together, paying their bills while they celebrated Caleb's every whim. I set the phone down, my hands steady now. I wasn't going to answer, wasn't going to explain. They'd figure out soon enough what it meant to stand on their own. For the first time, I felt like I was choosing myself, not them. Daniel walked into the room, his eyes catching the phone's glowing screen. "You did it?" he asked, his voice soft but proud. I nodded, showing him the message I'd sent. He read it, then looked at me with a smile. "You did the right thing," he said. "You've been carrying them for too long. It's time you protected your own worth." His words settled over me like a warm blanket, chasing away the guilt Barbara's voicemail tried to plant. Daniel had seen my sacrifices, my hurt when my family hadn't. His support made me feel seen, like I was finally stepping out of their shadow. I refreshed my email, half expecting another message from Barbara or Thomas. Instead, a notification from the bank popped up: automatic payment cancellations confirmed. I read it twice, letting the words sink in. The mortgage company had been notified. The insurance provider alerted, the utility companies informed. It was done. A wave of relief washed over me, lighter than I'd felt in years. I wasn't just cutting off their payments, I was cutting off their control. They'd relied on me without a thank you, without even showing up to my wedding. Now they'd have to face the consequences of their choices. Barbara's voicemail played in my mind, her accusation of selfishness looping like a broken record. I thought about calling her back, explaining every bill I'd paid, every sacrifice I'd made. But what was the point? They'd never listened before. Instead, I pictured their faces when the first overdue notice arrived, when the lights flickered because they hadn't paid. Caleb would probably spin some excuse, charm his way out of responsibility, but it wouldn't work this time. They'd have to deal with reality just like I had for years. Daniel sat beside me, scrolling through his phone. "They'll be fine," he said, sensing my thoughts. "Or they won't." "But that's not your burden anymore." I nodded, leaning into him. He was right. I'd spent so long trying to prove I was enough, thinking my money would buy their love. But love doesn't work that way, and neither does family. I closed my laptop, the weight of their expectations lifting with every second. I wasn't their ATM anymore. I was free. 1 week later, Caleb's big night had arrived, his chance to unveil his startup to a room full of investors. He'd rented out the grandest venue in Asheville, complete with sleek banners and a polished stage, all to sell his food delivery app that never got off the ground. I'd heard about the event through a friend, not an invitation, because of course Caleb hadn't bothered to include me. Barbara and Thomas were there though, seated in the front row, beaming with pride. I stood at the back of the room, uninvited, in a sharp business dress that turned heads as I walked in. For once, the attention wasn't on him. Caleb took the stage, all charm and confidence, spinning tales of his app's game-changing potential. The investors leaned forward, nodding, eating up his promises. I waited, my heart steady, my contract copy in hand. When he opened the floor for questions, I stepped forward, my heels clicking on the polished floor. The room went quiet. "I'm withdrawing my $65,000 investment," I said, my voice clear and firm, effective immediately. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Caleb's smile froze, his eyes locking onto mine. "You can't do that," he stammered, his voice cracking. "That's my money. It's mine," I shot back. "I funded your startup and you squandered it on dinners and gadgets." "I'm done." The investors shifted uncomfortably, whispering among themselves. Caleb's face reddened and he launched into a defense, his words tumbling over each other. "She's lying. This is just a misunderstanding," he shouted, pointing at me. But his outburst only made him look desperate, unraveling the polished image he'd built. One investor stood buttoning his jacket. "We'll need to review the financials," he said coldly. Others nodded their trust in Caleb, crumbling. Barbara pushed through the crowd, her face tight with anger. "Allison, stop this nonsense," she hissed, grabbing my arm. "You're embarrassing your brother." I pulled away, meeting her gaze. "No, Mom," I said. "He's embarrassing himself. And you let him." The words hung between us, heavy and final. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For once, I didn't care what she thought. I'd spent years trying to please her, to please them all, and they'd chosen Caleb's barbecue over my wedding. I wasn't backing down now. I turned to the investors, holding up the contract. "My investment is legally mine to withdraw," I said. "Check the terms." Caleb tried to interrupt, his voice rising, but the room was no longer his. The investors were scribbling notes, some already heading for the exits. His project, his big moment, was falling apart, and he had no one to blame but himself. I walked out, my head high, leaving Caleb stuttering on stage and Barbara frozen in the crowd. The air outside felt lighter, like I'd finally shed their expectations. Daniel was waiting in the car, his smile warm as I slid into the passenger seat. "You were incredible in there," he said, his voice full of pride. "You stood up for yourself." I leaned back, a laugh escaping me. "I didn't I?" For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control, not just reacting to their demands. Daniel reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "They're going to feel this," he said, "and they should." I nodded, the weight of my decision settling in, not guilt, but power. The next day, Thomas's message came through as I sipped my coffee. "You've hurt this family, Allison," it read. "You owe us an apology." I stared at the words, my grip tightening on the mug. "Hurt the family." After years of paying their bills after they skipped my wedding for Caleb's barbecue, now I was the one who owed them. I set the phone down, my jaw clenched. Thomas's demand wasn't new. Guilt was their favorite weapon. But this time, I wasn't bending. I opened my laptop and pulled up years of bank statements, each one a record of my sacrifices. Mortgage payments, insurance premiums, utility bills, I'd covered them all month after month, while they praised Caleb's empty dreams. I compiled every receipt into a single email, attaching files that totaled over $100,000. In the subject line, I wrote, "What I've done for you." The body was simple. "Here's every payment I've made since I started working. I'm done." I sent it to Barbara, Thomas, and Caleb, my fingers steady on the send button. Let them see the truth in black and white. I wasn't just stopping there. I typed a second email, this one to all three. "I'm cutting contact," I wrote. "I don't need this family to know my worth." Sending it felt like breaking a chain. For years, I'd tied my value to their approval, thinking if I paid enough, they'd see me. But I was enough without them. I closed my laptop, my heart lighter than it had been in years. Their guilt trips, their demands, they couldn't touch me anymore. Word got around fast. A friend texted me that Caleb had sold his car, a flashy convertible he'd bought with business expenses to cover the family's overdue bills. His startup, already shaky after my withdrawal, had collapsed entirely. Investors had backed out, spooked by his outburst at the convention center. I felt no pity. He'd had years to stand on his own, but he'd chosen to lean on me instead. Now he was learning what it meant to face consequences. Barbara took to social media as expected. Her post was vague but pointed. "Some people forget what family means. Ungrateful hearts hurt the most." I saw it through a friend's screenshot, her words dripping with blame. But the comments told a different story. "You skipped her wedding for a barbecue," one friend wrote. "Maybe look in the mirror." Another chimed in. "She paid your bills for years." Who's ungrateful? Barbara's post backfired, her friends turning on her, calling out the favoritism I'd lived with my whole life. I didn't comment or engage. I didn't need to. The truth was out. Then my phone buzzed with a message from my Aunt Deborah. "You did the right thing," she wrote. "I'm proud of you." Her words caught me off guard, a rare voice of support from someone in the family. Deborah had always stayed out of the drama, quietly observing from the sidelines. Her message felt like a lifeline, a reminder that not everyone saw me as the villain. I typed a quick reply. "Thank you, Aunt Deborah." It was short, but it meant everything. Daniel walked into the kitchen, noticing my smile. "Good news?" he asked. I showed him Deborah's message, and he nodded. "She's right," he said. "You're stronger than they ever gave you credit for." I leaned into him, grateful for his steady presence. I'd spent so long chasing a family that didn't value me, but now I saw what I had: people like Daniel and even Deborah who saw me for who I was. 1 week later, Megan sent me a photo. It showed Caleb standing next to a for sale sign. The house our family's home for years was on the market, a desperate move to cover the mortgage they could no longer afford. Megan's message was brief. They couldn't keep up. I stared at the image. Caleb's shoulders slumped, his face etched with frustration. His credit was shot, ruined by unpaid bills and a failed startup. I felt a pang, not of guilt, but of finality. They'd relied on me for so long, and now reality was closing in. Barbara and Thomas hadn't reached out since my email, their silence louder than any argument. Friends told me they were struggling. Late notices piling up, their savings drained without my support. I'd expected anger, maybe more accusations, but their absence was telling. They'd built their lives around Caleb's dreams, and now those dreams had crumbled, leaving them to face the mess. I didn't feel triumph, just a quiet resolve. I'd made the right choice, stepping away from their chaos. I turned my focus to my own life. Daniel and I decided to celebrate our marriage differently, hosting a small backyard reception with close friends. The evening was warm, filled with laughter, string lights twinkling above us. We danced to soft music, surrounded by people who showed up, who cared. No empty chairs, no waiting for family who wouldn't come. I looked at Daniel, his smile bright, and felt a peace I hadn't known before. This was what mattered: people who saw me, who valued me without conditions. Sitting with friends that night, I realized something profound. Family isn't just blood, it's the people who choose you, who stand by you when it counts. My mom, my dad, Caleb, they'd chosen someone else over and over. But Daniel, my friends, even Deborah and Megan, they were my real family. They didn't ask me to prove my worth with money or sacrifices. They loved me for me. That truth settled deep, filling the spaces where hurt used to live. I thought about the journey that brought me here. I'd spent years chasing approval, thinking I could buy love with every bill I paid. But no amount of money could make them see me. The lesson was hard-won but clear. Don't wait for others to validate your worth. You define it yourself through your choices, your boundaries, your life. I'd found mine, and it was more than enough. I want to thank you for listening to my story. It's been a long road, but sharing it feels right. If any of this resonates with you, please share your thoughts in the comments. Your stories, your strength, they matter too. Before I went to bed that night, I opened my phone and found the old family group chat. Messages from months ago lingered: Barbara's excuses, Thomas's demands, Caleb's silence. I didn't hesitate. I deleted the chat, watching it vanish from my screen. No regrets, no looking back. I was free.